Hello, welcome to my talk about the Adrian helmet. I have an M15, well I think it's an M15, either that or an M16. I've done a few talks about the Star Helm, the M16 style helmet and the M16 Brody helmet, so this time it's the turn of the French. Okay, without further ado, here's my talk about the Adrian helmet. So, there's my Adrian helmet. I'm not 100% sure whether it's a 1915 or 1916. I've got a shrewd suspicion it's a 1916. It's got some of the rivets on the side here that would indicate it's slightly older. But anyway, so what do we want to find out about it? It was down to General Auguste Louis Adrian, hence the name. He was credited to it, didn't actually design it, but was credited to it. Okay, and as I say, this is either an M15 or an M16 helmet. One of the first modern day helmets, in fact the first modern day helmet that was produced. It kind of beat the Star Helm, which you'll see just slightly to the right there, and the Brody helmet there. Okay, so just coming back to it. All right, I have done talks on both those other ones too on YouTube, so please do have a look at those and subscribe to my channel if you wish, or just put a thumbs up. Anyway, so the first combat steel, basically modern steel helmet of the World War I, of the First World War, produced in 1915, hence M15, Model 15. Previously, the French did wear the keepy style hat. You see the French gendarmes and French police or whatever wearing them now, and they wore those, and they did have actually like a steel skull cap underneath, which was quite effective if it stayed on, but unfortunately it didn't. It often fell off their heads, so wasn't that effective. Having said that, slightly better than the British. We had the soft peak cap there. That's the 1907 version. So that's the soft peak cap that the British wore. And the Germans wore the, you can just see that there, the Pickelhaube, or the Feldmützen soft cap. But anyway, let's come back to my, sorry, I keep deviating here. Okay. Right, what do we want to know about it? Like the Allies, like the Star Helm and the Brody helmet, they reduced the head casualty rate, well, the fatality rate, by between 60 and 70%. So it was huge. It's kind of interesting to realise that during the 19th century, when armaments and cannon and ordnance were being flung around the battlefield, no one ever really thought about proper head protection. The Germans did use the Pickelhaube into the middle of the 19th century, but no one really came up with anything to protect the soldier, which makes you wonder what they thought of the soldiers. But anyway, it did reduce the accident rate, the fatality rate by a huge amount. Interestingly, the French were the only ones that also produced armoured epaulettes on the shoulders, so not only will you be protected from up above on your head, but also your shoulders too. But it still caused a major problem for the casualty clearing stations, because there were still a number of people coming through. In fact, oddly, more came through the casualty clearing stations once the steel helmets were adopted, because these were people that would normally have just been buried. So they came through with all sorts of injuries, but not fatal injuries. Interesting also, as I've just mentioned, it would be really protecting you from above, ordnance from above, and that's where the casualty rate was. If someone shot a bullet straight at that helmet, it would fragment and go straight through, especially, unfortunately, the Adrian, which ended up being a little bit more brittle than the Brody helmet or the Star Helm, partly because the steel was a sort of a mild steel, and a much lighter helmet, partly also because, if you can see, there's several different sections to the helmet. So you've got the peak at the front, you've then got a seam here, you've also got a seam there, and you can see that actually moves, and you've got the crest there too. So There we go, but we'll have another look at that in a minute. Interestingly, the weight of the helmet are much lighter than the other ones, which was good in a way, but not so good in another way. So you're looking about £1 11 ounces, so just shy of sort of £2. The other helmets would be quite considerably more. Now, the advantage of that is that it'd be much lighter and you would wear it more. The disadvantage is it's obviously not quite as tough, so less protective. There we have it. It's quite a complex helmet to make, actually, although it was relatively cheap. Apparently, now I stand corrected here, but I've read somewhere that there were 70 stages to making this. I'd be more likely to think 7, but anyway, 70 stages to make this. The very iconic, artistic helmet. It did help improve morale for the French. They were very much in love with their Adrian helmets, and in it, like I say, it did boost morale, but as I say, the lightness and the fiddliness of the helmet did cause problems. Yeah, so if we look at the helmet itself, this one too, we're looking at sort of several different pieces. There's the front visor, which we're having a look here at. Okay, there's obviously the rear visor, which we're also looking at there. Okay, we've got the crest piece on top, and then the metal skull bit that you can see where that's shiny. So it was made up, and of course did mean that it sometimes caused problems in terms of fragmenting if it was hit. Okay, the earliest ones didn't have the rivets, which I have got on there, and that's what makes me think it's possibly an M16 or even a 1917 one. You've still got the blue hue to it. Okay, so there you go. The inside of the helmet, and I will show you inside this one in a minute, although it's actually not got an inner, but I'm going to show you the inside insert of a Stahlhelm, which was actually very, very similar. It had the 7 fingers, unlike this one, which has got 9, and was either made of goat skin or cow skin or sheep skin, I think. But there you have it. Inside the helmet also, and let's just have a little look there. Okay, you've got the corrugated aluminium, or whatever that actually is. I'm not sure when aluminium was formed, but if it's not aluminium, it's certainly corrugated, and that would actually act as a cushion with the padding, which would have been not dissimilar to that. Okay, these all had ink stamps on them too. Now I've looked carefully around this one, and I can't actually see the ink stamps. They did wear off eventually, so unlike the German one that would have the mark of the make of the or the heat stamp or the seal stamp of the maker, and also the size, the French just put an ink stamp on it. Okay, so what else have we got here? In 1915, we're just going to bring it back. In 1915, they actually produced a cloth cap for it, and as you can see, even with the lights that I've got on here, it's stopped the reflection. So was introduced in 1915, but actually, interestingly, removed in 1916, because what they were finding was the wounded French soldiers were getting infections from the Hessian or whatever the cover was. So that was actually removed. Very cheap to produce, as we said, 20 million of them apparently, and there is a picture of Churchill wearing one at some point in the war, in the First World War anyway. He was always a bit different, wasn't he? So the M15, the deflector crest here, those are not the original rivets, by the way, but the deflector crest was obviously there to deflect something, whether that's a sabre or whatever. It's not going to make much use for a bullet. The branched insignia, and we've got Régiment Français, so there you go there, and that's an infantry regiment showing the exploding bombs. If it had the guns, it would then be the artillery or whatever. And the scene the kind of scene midway round the edge here, okay, right there, was obviously a separate piece, as is this bit here. So even the peak at the front and the back were separate pieces. So gave you a bit of an idea as to, and that's the back, not dissimilar to the front, to be fair. Okay. So, right, what else about this helmet? Let's just have a look on the inside. We have got, I can only think, a vent at the top. It's kind of odd to have such a big hole in the top there, but that's the vent. And then you can see the pieces there that would attach the inner of the helmet. And like I said, that was either sheepskin or goat skin. Okay. Anything else? Not a huge amount else. Just to give you a few figures, 8 million soldiers in the French army in the First World War. 4 million of them were wounded. That's 50%. 1 million died. That's way more than many of the Allies. And 4.26% of the population were actually killed. That's the whole population. Odd helmets, aren't they? I mean, they're a very personal thing, and I'm just fascinated by them. But it is amazing to think that with all the artillery in the 19th century, that they didn't actually produce a metal helmet. I mean, we had the Greeks and the Romans wearing certainly tough helmets, and some of them were metal, but we didn't. We only produced them at the beginning of the First World War, and this was the first one. Okay, interesting. Just a little fact, which I thought was quite interesting. 1.5 billion tons of fire armaments were used in France in the First World War, which has caused lead and arsenic poisoning in the soil. And they think that they'll still be picking up ordnance for about 500 years. 200 in 2007, just another interesting fact, 50 to 75,000 unexploded ordnance from the First World War were found by the French government. Okay, so haven't got much else to say. I've done a couple of other talks on the Brodie helmet, and so that's my my Star helm, and that's an M16, and my Northumberland Fusiliers one there that was used by my great uncle on the Somme, and actually, funnily enough, he bought that one back, the one on the left back. Looking at the soft cap there and the pickle horb, and that's actually a doughboy helmet with a reproduction inner. Anyway, just coming back to here. Thank you very much for listening. I do hope you've enjoyed it. Please subscribe if you want. If not, just leave a message. Nice one, please. And good talking to you. Bye-bye.